3 days after his father's funeral, my husband told me I was nothing without his $500 million inheritance and filed for divorce. Said I had just been his backup plan until the money cleared. But what he didn't know was that most of that fortune was tied to a federally regulated commercial loan under review, and at 9:17 a.m., the bank triggered the acceleration clause, froze the estate, notified federal compliance, and within hours, the same inheritance he left me for was reduced to $78,000 because the woman he thought was replaceable was the only one in the room who understood the numbers. Chapter 1. The day he said I was replaceable. The lilies from my father-in-law's funeral had not even started to wilt when my husband decided I was no longer worth keeping. 3 days earlier, I had stood beside him at the graveside, my hand wrapped around his, listening to people describe his father as disciplined, visionary, self-made. Now I was standing in the living room of that same house in Myers Park, still in black, while Owen Mercer held divorce papers and looked at me like I was an outdated contract. I am 43 years old. I am a senior regional director at a cloud security firm in Charlotte. I negotiate 7-figure agreements for companies that panic over risk exposure. I understand leverage. I understand liability. What I did not understand was how quickly a man could replace a wife with an inheritance. Owen did not ease into it. Dad's estate is worth close to $500 million, he said. I have seen the numbers. I'm not going to keep pretending I need this marriage. This marriage. He placed the papers on the coffee table as if he were closing a deal. You were my safety net, Claire, my backup plan, my ATM until the inheritance came through. There are sentences that stay with you forever, not because they are loud, but because they are precise. ATM, not partner, not wife, not family, an ATM. I looked at him and saw something I had missed before, not grief, not even relief, ambition, pure, unfiltered entitlement. He continued talking, pacing now. I already spoke to the estate accountant. Dad structured everything through Mercer Development Group, commercial holdings, partnerships, properties across 3 states. I am done grinding in medical sales. I am pivoting to investing, private equity maybe, development, something bigger. I do not need to be tied down anymore. Tied down? To me? He had already told 2 of his friends that he was about to become very wealthy. I had seen the congratulatory texts pop up on his phone the night before. One of them had written, "Welcome to the club. Let's talk investments soon." Probate had not even begun. "Are you sure?" I asked quietly. He laughed, mistaking my calm for denial. "I have seen the asset reports. Dad's net worth is hovering near $500 million. This is life-changing money. Why would I stay in a marriage where I was carrying someone who does not even need to work anymore?" Carrying someone. For 3 years, I had covered more of the household expenses after he quit his job to focus on helping his father. For 9 months, my income kept the utilities on and the insurance paid, while he insisted he was stepping into something bigger soon. He reached for the pen and pushed it toward me. "Sign it. We can keep this amicable, no drama, clean break." The house still smelled like sympathy flowers and catered coffee. His father's portrait hung over the mantel, stern eyes looking down at us. I remembered sitting with Richard at the dining table reviewing spreadsheets while Owen drifted in and out of the room, bored. Liquidity is different from value, Richard once told me. Most people never learn the difference. Owen had never stayed long enough to listen. "You really think $500 million just turns into cash overnight?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "Claire, please, do not start. I know what I saw. The estate is massive. I am not going to waste my life chasing commission checks when my inheritance is sitting there." Inheritance? He said it like it was already wired into his account. I picked up the pen. If I screamed, he would feel justified. If I cried, he would feel powerful. If I begged, he would feel correct. So I signed. Once, then again. He blinked. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it," I said. He studied my face, searching for damage. "I will have someone pack the rest of your things. Coordinate with my assistant." Assistant? He had not worked in 9 months. I went upstairs, pulled a suitcase from the closet, folded clothes methodically. My phone buzzed with an email from a client in Atlanta about a compliance deadline. Real risk, real numbers, real accountability. When I came back downstairs, Owen was pouring himself a drink, already relaxed, already envisioning a future without me in it. "You'll see," he said. "In a year, you will not recognize my life. I might move to Naples. Mom is there. Lower taxes, better opportunities. I will finally be operating at the level I deserve." Deserve? He had stood beside his father's casket 3 days ago. Now he was planning tax advantages. I paused at the doorway. "Are you sure you want to do this now? This week?" He shrugged. "Why wait? Dad built something incredible. It's my time now." My time? I stepped outside into the late afternoon light. Neighbors who had attended the funeral were back to normal routines. A couple across the street were unloading groceries. Life moves fast when it's not your marriage collapsing. As I placed my suitcase in the trunk, I felt something settle inside me. Owen believed that net worth meant liquidity. He believed that equity meant access. He believed that because a statement showed $500 million in combined assets, he had inherited $500 million in spendable cash. He did not understand structures. He did not understand leverage. He did not understand what his father had actually built. And he had not been in the room when certain conversations took place. Through the front window, I could see him on his phone, already making calls. I imagined him telling someone that he had finally cut loose what was holding him back. He thought the divorce was his first smart investment. He had no idea that within 24 hours, he would be calling me with a very different voice. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a house that still smelled of morning and a man who had just mistaken paper value for power. Chapter 2. The Red Flags I Explained Away. The highway stretched ahead of me in long ribbons of white light, and somewhere between one exit and the next, I began replaying every warning sign I had carefully explained away. In 2018, my first husband, Michael Torres, died in a scaffolding collapse outside Raleigh. He was 40. I was 38 and sitting in a hospital corridor under fluorescent lights that made everything feel unreal. One minute, I was answering emails about a client audit. The next, I was citing paperwork that used words like fatality and liability. Michael left behind a life insurance policy worth $520,000. After nearly a year of back and forth with attorneys and insurers, there was also an $80,000 settlement from the construction company. His parents insisted I keep every dollar. "You need security," his mother told me at her kitchen table. "Do not feel guilty for surviving." I invested most of the money into diversified index funds and municipal bonds. I left a portion in a high-yield savings account under my name only. It was not secrecy, it was stability. I had learned the hard way that life can collapse without warning. 2 years later, in 2020, I met Owen Mercer at a medical device conference in Nashville. He was charismatic and confident, the kind of man who seemed comfortable in any room. He told me he admired strong women. He liked that I worked in cybersecurity, that I managed regional sales teams, that I spoke the language of contracts and risk. By 2021, we were married. Owen worked in medical device sales across the Carolinas. He chased hospital contracts and commission bonuses with the energy of someone who measured his worth in quarterly numbers. He talked about growth constantly, expansion, bigger deals, higher tiers. When his father, Richard Mercer, was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's in 2022, Owen's attention shifted. Dad built Mercer Development Group from nothing, he told me one evening in the kitchen. I need to be around more. I need to understand everything. I respected that. Family loyalty mattered to me. What I did not notice immediately was how often he began talking about the future in terms of inheritance. When he is gone, everything changes, he said casually one night while scrolling through his phone. I paused. That's a strange way to talk about your father. It's realistic, he replied. He has a portfolio worth close to $500 million. You cannot tell me that does not shift our position. Our position. The phrase sounded like a business merger rather than a son grieving a future loss. The questions started small. How much of Michael's policy do you still keep liquid? He asked one night as we watched television. Why? We are married. Transparency matters. Transparency does not mean unrestricted access, I said evenly. He laughed like I was overreacting. In early 2023, he announced he was leaving medical sales. If I'm going to take over Dad's business one day, I need to understand the properties, the tenants, the financing. This is temporary. Temporary stretched into 9 months. During that time, my salary covered most of our shared expenses, mortgage contributions, utilities, insurance, travel. I told myself it was an investment in our shared future. Then, in October, he came home grinning. You're going to love this, he said, tossing keys onto the kitchen island. In the driveway sat a restored 1968 Mustang, deep black paint, polished chrome, immaculate interior. Tell me that is not ours, I said. It's an investment, he replied. Classic cars appreciate. How much? $32,000. From where? From our account. That night, I logged into the bank app. It was not just the car. A $12,000 watch, $8,000 in golf memberships and custom clubs, designer suits, boutique hotel charges for weekends he said were networking trips. In 3 months, he had spent just over $62,000. The next evening, I placed the printed statement in front of him. Explain this. He barely looked at it. Why are you acting like this is catastrophic? Because you quit your job and I'm covering the bills, I said evenly. $60,000 is not pocket change. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. My dad's net worth is close to $500 million. Once the inheritance clears, this will not matter. You are obsessing over short-term cash when we are about to enter a completely different tier. Different tier? You are spending money that is not yours yet, I replied. It is mine, he said, without hesitation. It just hasn't been transferred. A few days later, I overheard him outside showing the Mustang to a neighbor. Give it a few months, he was saying. Big inheritance coming in. I'm going to start making some serious moves. That same week, one of his friends texted him while we were at dinner. When the estate settles, I want in on your first deal. Don't forget us when you're running a fund. He laughed and showed me like it was inevitable. The assumption of wealth had already replaced the discipline required to earn it. Not long after, I walked into Richard's study unexpectedly. Spreadsheets covered the screen. Owen sat across from Richard. Explain to me the difference between asset value and liquidity, Richard said calmly. Owen waved a hand. Dad, you have properties in 3 states. Liquidity is not exactly a concern. That was not my question, Richard replied. Owen glanced at his watch. I have a call. We can go over this later. He left the room. Richard looked at me instead. You understand what I'm asking, Alessandra? Yes, I said quietly. Asset value is not the same as accessible cash, and leverage changes everything. He nodded slowly. He never stays long enough to hear the full explanation. That sentence lingered in my mind long after I left the room. That night, another bank alert pinged my phone.
I stared at the notification for a long moment before opening the app. I logged in and removed Owen as an authorized user. I canceled the secondary card. I turned on real-time alerts for every transaction. The next morning, he stormed into the kitchen. My card declined at the gas station. I removed access, I said. You can't just do that. I can. It's my account. He stared at me as if I had betrayed him. You're acting like I'm stealing from you. I'm acting like someone who refuses to be treated like an ATM, I replied quietly. His jaw tightened. When the inheritance hits, none of this is going to matter. He repeated that sentence over and over in the months that followed. When he is gone, everything changes. The more he said it, the more it stopped sounding like ambition and started sounding like expectation. And expectation built on someone else's death carries a kind of coldness that is impossible to ignore.
Chapter 3. What 500 million really meant. In January of 2024, Richard asked me to come to his office on a quiet Thursday morning. The winter light through the tall windows made the room look almost clinical. Owen was out meeting someone he described as a potential capital partner, already speaking as if the inheritance were a signed wire transfer. I walked into the study knowing this conversation would not be casual. Richard sat behind his desk, posture straight despite the tremor in his hands. Across from him sat a woman in a navy suit with a leather portfolio resting neatly on her lap. Alessandra, thank you for coming, Richard said. This is Dana Whitaker. She is my estate attorney and the executor of my trust. Dana stood and shook my hand. I have heard you understand business, she said. That will make this easier. Easier was not the word I would have chosen. Dana opened her portfolio and laid out several organized documents. Caldwell Commercial Holdings LLC is the primary holding entity, she began. As of the latest valuation, the consolidated net asset value fluctuates between $480 and $520 million, depending on market conditions. There it was, the number Owen had already mentally spent. Dana continued. That figure represents equity in commercial properties, development projects, and partnership stakes. It is not $500 million in liquid cash. Richard watched me carefully. Most people hear the headline number and assume inheritance equals immediate access, he said. That is rarely how family wealth actually works. Family wealth. Inheritance. The words sounded different in this room than they did in Owen's mouth. Dana turned another page. In 2019, Caldwell Commercial Holdings secured a commercial development loan of $310 million. The loan is secured by multiple high-value properties and personally guaranteed. Collateral, I said quietly. Yes, those assets are pledged as collateral. If the borrower passes before certain restructuring milestones are completed, the bank has the contractual right to accelerate the loan and implement protective measures. What does that mean in plain language? I asked. It means assets tied to the loan could be frozen during probate, she said. Income streams could be temporarily restricted. Distributions to beneficiaries would be limited to unrestricted liquid assets. How long would probate take? I asked. 6 to 9 months under normal conditions, Dana answered. Potentially longer if the bank exercises its rights aggressively. The air in the room felt heavier. Richard folded his hands. Owen has never sat through a full financial briefing, he said calmly. He hears 500 million and believes that is what he is inheriting. The word inheriting landed harder than the number. He is inheriting structure, Dana corrected gently, and obligations. I thought about the Mustang in the driveway, the watch, the casual confidence in Owen's voice when he talked about divorce and starting fresh. If something happens before the restructuring is complete, I said slowly, there will not be $500 million available. Dana met my eyes. There will be significantly less liquid cash than that headline figure suggests. Taxes, outstanding obligations, and loan covenants will reduce distributable amounts. Richard's expression softened. I do not resent his ambition, he said calmly. I resent that he does not want to understand the foundation beneath it. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with Parkinson's. I am telling you this because you understand risk, not because I expect you to fix anything, but because you deserve clarity about what this inheritance actually represents. Clarity. As Dana walked through more documents, my mind began connecting dots Owen had refused to see. The $500 million Owen believed made him untouchable was largely leveraged equity. The family wealth he bragged about online was intertwined with bank covenants and collateral triggers. The inheritance was not cash, it was complexity. If the bank accelerates the loan, Dana added, there could be very little left to distribute immediately. Very little. In that moment, I realized something that changed everything. The $500 million Owen believed made him untouchable was not even legally his to access in the way he imagined. It was paper value, bound by contracts. Over the next few weeks, Richard's health declined gradually. More appointments, more fatigue. Owen hovered around him more often, but his conversations revolved around future expansion. I've been thinking about capital allocation. Once probate is done, I might restructure some of Dad's holdings, maybe bring in outside investors. Do you know which properties are tied directly to the loan? I asked. Dana will handle the legal details. I'm focused on vision. Vision without comprehension. In early February, Richard suffered a sudden cardiac complication related to his underlying condition. The call came before sunrise. By mid-morning, I was back in a hospital corridor that felt painfully familiar. The funeral was dignified. Investors attended, partners offered condolences. Owen stood tall, accepting handshakes like he'd stepped into a role he'd rehearsed. Within days, his online presence shifted. He updated his LinkedIn headline to Strategic Capital Management and Real Estate Development. He posted about leadership transitions, about stewarding family wealth, and long-term growth. Comments poured in. Excited to see what you do with the Mercer portfolio. Looking forward to investing alongside you. He showed me one message over dinner. People are already reaching out about deals. Once the inheritance clears, I'm going to be operating at a completely different level. When do you think that inheritance clears? I asked. He shrugged as if it was procedural. A few months. Probate is procedural. It's not like the bank is going to freeze everything. The bank is not going to freeze everything. I thought of the loan documents, the collateral schedules, the clause Dana had pointed to with her pen. What does that mean if the bank accelerates the loan? I asked. He smiled like I was being dramatic. You worry too much. Dad built an empire. I'm not going to micromanage fear. He was already spending money that legally did not exist, already divorcing me over wealth that was still entangled with obligations. As he talked about vision and capital and expansion, I felt a strange calm settle over me, because I knew something he did not. The inheritance he believed had freed him was bound by contracts that did not care about ambition, and when those contracts activated, the difference between paper value and real money would become impossible to ignore. Chapter 4. The Call from the Bank. The bank did not care about ambition, inheritance fantasies, or the timing of a divorce. 24 hours after I signed the papers and he walked away from our marriage because of $500 million, Owen walked into First Carolina Bank expecting to access his inheritance. He believed the estate would open like a vault. Instead, it shut like a door. Dana Whitaker was already seated in the conference room when he arrived, along with a senior vice president from the commercial lending division. Owen later described the room to me in clipped fragments, but I can reconstruct it perfectly. He began confidently. I am here to initiate distribution from my father's estate. I need to access capital tied to Caldwell Commercial Holdings. The banker did not smile. Mr. Mercer, the estate is currently under protective review due to the outstanding 2019 commercial development loan. It is in probate, Owen replied impatiently. Probate does not freeze $500 million. Dana corrected him calmly. The $310 million loan is secured by multiple properties as collateral. Upon your father's passing, the bank exercised its right to review and temporarily restrict asset transfers during probate. He leaned back. You are telling me the bank froze everything? Not everything, the banker said evenly, but the majority of assets tied to the collateral structure are restricted until the review concludes. And how much is unrestricted? Owen demanded. Dana opened a document and slid it across the table. After taxes, obligations, and outstanding covenants, the current liquid portion available for distribution is $78,450. $78,450. He had divorced me for an inheritance he believed was $500 million. He was left with less liquid cash than he had spent on a car and a watch. This is not correct, he said. My father was worth $500 million. On paper, Dana replied, net asset value reflects equity. It does not represent accessible cash. Liquidity and inheritance are not the same thing. He left the bank without another word. My phone rang less than an hour later. His voice had none of its usual polish. Alessandra, something is wrong. What happened? I asked, already knowing. They froze the estate. The bank exercised its collateral rights, I said. There is only $78,000 available. That cannot be right. Where is the rest of the inheritance? I let the silence stretch for a moment. The inheritance is equity, I said, not cash. Net asset value is not a checking account. Collateral is not a savings fund. You knew about this? I understood the structure. You let me file for divorce over this? You filed for divorce over money you never verified. His breathing grew uneven. I already told people I was restructuring assets. I know. The humiliation did not explode. It unfolded quietly. Trevor Mills called him 2 days later. I heard you're between transitions, Trevor said carefully. If you want to come back into medical sales, I can get you on commission only. No base salary until you rebuild your pipeline. Commission only. The grind he had declared beneath him. That evening, his LinkedIn profile changed. Strategic capital management disappeared. The posts about stewarding family wealth were quietly deleted. The headline reverted to something vague about business development. A former college friend called him on speaker while I was in the kitchen. So, where is the money? The friend asked bluntly. I thought you inherited $500 million. It is tied up in probate, Owen muttered. It's complicated. Complicated was the polite word for collapsed. Dana called me later that week. As executor, I need to inform you of the final liquid amount available for distribution, she said. I'm aware it is $78,450. Correct. Under the trust and the marital reimbursement clause, $39,000 is allocated to you. Allocated? I repeated. Yes, it reflects documented financial contributions made during the period Mr. Mercer was not earning income. He is legally obligated to transfer that amount. Contracts again. Precise, unemotional. That evening, Owen stood in the kitchen, holding his phone. I have to send you $39,000, he said flatly. It is in the trust, I replied. This is not how it was supposed to go. How was it supposed to go? I thought once the inheritance cleared, I could reset everything. The divorce, my reputation, my position. He had divorced me for an inheritance that legally did not exist in the way he imagined. He had framed me as a temporary support system while waiting for wealth that was locked behind contracts. You filed for divorce because of that inheritance, I said calmly. Now, the bank has frozen the estate, and the only real cash available is $78,000. He sat down slowly. I thought I understood it. You understood the headline number. He ran his hands over his face. I already told people I was launching investments. I know. Financial literacy is power, not because it makes you wealthy, but because it prevents you from destroying your life over illusions. I was counting on that money, he admitted. I know. The transfer arrived 2 days later. $39,000. Clean, documented, real. He called that night. So now what? He asked quietly. Now you rebuild. And us? There was no anger left in his voice, only uncertainty. You divorced me for an inheritance, I said calmly. You don't get to lean on me anymore. I did not raise my voice. I did not celebrate. I simply stated the difference between paper value and real money, between illusion and consequence. And for the first time since he filed for divorce, he had nothing left to argue with. Chapter 5. Quiet Aftermath. What followed was not explosive. It was quiet, steady, and irreversible. Probate closed in September of 2024. The bank completed its restructuring of the 2019 commercial loan tied to Caldwell Commercial Holdings. Assets were adjusted, leverage reduced, cash flow monitored. The legal process unfolded exactly the way Dana had predicted months earlier. There was no $500 million jackpot waiting at the end. After taxes, covenants, and restructuring protections, the liquid portion of the estate remained $78,450. $39,000 of that had already been transferred to me under the marital reimbursement clause. He divorced me for $500 million. He rebuilt on commissions. The inheritance he thought would replace me never replaced reality. When the bank froze the estate, it froze the illusion with it. Owen tried to recover quickly. Pride does not vanish overnight. Trevor Mills brought him back into medical device sales on commission only. No base salary, no guarantees, just quotas and territory. It is temporary, Owen told a former colleague at a networking lunch. Once the estate stabilizes, I will pivot into capital again. Capital. The word that once justified our divorce. By November, he'd missed 2 quotas. I just need one more cycle, he told Trevor over the phone, voice tight. The pipeline is building. Pipelines respond to effort, not entitlement. By January, he added part-time delivery shifts to supplement his income. One evening, I saw him through the window of a restaurant downtown, carrying insulated bags, checking orders on his phone, and moving quickly to the next address. There is nothing shameful about hard work. The shame was in the contrast. The man who once told me he did not need me anymore because of an inheritance now depended on hourly tips. Social circles recalibrate quickly. The friends who had commented under his LinkedIn posts about strategic capital management stopped asking about deals. Invitations grew quieter, conversations shortened. At a holiday gathering, someone asked him plainly, "So what happened to the $500 million inheritance?" "It is complicated," he replied. The interest on the loan alone was more than what he walked away with. Complicated is a polite word for miscalculated. In contrast, my life moved forward with deliberate simplicity. In October, I closed on a condo in Midtown Atlanta. 2 bedrooms, clean lines, balcony facing the skyline, mortgage in my name only. No shared obligations, no hidden dependencies. When the $39,000 hit my account months earlier, I did not spend it. I labeled it lesson fund. It wasn't about the amount, it was about the clarity attached to it. Financial betrayal cuts deeper than infidelity because it exposes how someone values you, as leverage, as temporary support, as a bridge until money arrives. Standing in my new kitchen the first evening after moving in, I felt something steady. Not triumph, not revenge, stability.
Owen called me once more in late October. I was wrong, he said. There was no edge in his voice. I thought the inheritance would fix everything. I thought divorcing you before it came through would make things cleaner. You divorced me for money you never verified, I replied calmly. I thought 500 million meant security. It meant leverage, I said, and debt. He paused. I underestimated you, he admitted, and I overestimated what I thought I had. Financial literacy had never been about superiority. It had been about understanding risk, contracts, liquidity, the difference between equity and cash. I never needed your father's inheritance. I needed partnership. I needed respect. I see that now, he answered. Seeing does not rewrite the past. I hope you rebuild, I told him sincerely, but I will not return to being someone's contingency plan. He exhaled slowly. I understand. He sold the Mustang quietly weeks later. No announcement, no explanation, just a smaller car parked outside his apartment complex. Life did not punish him dramatically. It corrected him slowly. And I did not win because he struggled. I won because I stopped depending on someone who mistook paper value for power. The $500 million illusion that destroyed our marriage ended up clarifying my worth. The bank froze the estate. It unfroze my independence. On a cool November evening, I stepped onto my balcony and looked at the Atlanta skyline glowing against the dark. Traffic moved steadily below. Office lights flickered across glass towers. I did not feel victorious. I felt anchored. No waiting for an inheritance, no calculating someone else's future as my exit strategy, no wondering if I was loved or simply convenient. He chased inheritance. I built independence. If you discovered that you were someone's backup plan until money arrived, would you stay and negotiate, or would you walk away and build something of your own? Would you cling to illusion or choose self-respect? If this story resonated with you, stay with this channel. There are more stories about financial independence, boundaries, and what happens when contracts expose character. Real wealth is not a headline number. It's understanding what that number actually means. And when I stand here now overlooking a city I chose for myself, I know something without doubt. He thought money would make him powerful. Understanding money made me free. If you value stories where strength is quiet but unshakable, subscribe.